Let's finish with the flying monk, because I'm a history fan. I love World War II, the story of good persevering over evil. No, we never love war. We never ever want that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about good prevailing over evil. And the flying monk, what's the story of this? This is the first story I wanted to hear when I went to Europe. There were many Allied pilots. The Allies were the good guys, the United States, Great Britain, Australia, France, okay? And they had a lot of different nationalities fighting on the Allied side. Many different beliefs, many different religions, and they all testified to an amazing story. Every time when they got in their airplanes to fly their military mission, to approach the area of San Giovanni Rotondo, they saw a monk flying in the sky who was stretching out his wounded hands, preventing them from dropping bombs. Why? Because the Germans had a munitions position there, and they wanted to blow up the German position. So the Allied bombers kept flying to bomb this position where the Germans were right next to the monastery, where Padre Pio was. The Germans had occupied it. So the nearby areas were constantly bombarded. But yet, San Giovanni Rotondo, not a single bomb. This event was directly witnessed by several pilots, but at first they were all scared to say anything. They're like, they're gonna ship me out here and put me in the loony bin. So all these pilots who saw it, none of them would say anything. They were petrified. It's like today's cancel culture. They thought they'd be canceled out of being pilots. So finally, an Italian Air Force general, Bernardo Rossini, got fed up. He said, I'm sick and tired of you guys. I've had enough of this garbage. And he went up, a general. And he went up, and he saw it. A flying monk that forced the plane. And the plane couldn't fly over San Giovanni Rotondo, couldn't drop its bombs, and planes actually turned around, and the pilots couldn't stop the planes from literally turning around. So this guy was quoted, this General Rossini, he said, each time the pilots returned from their missions, they spoke of this monk in the sky. Now, I would correct him. He's a friar, not a monk. And they diverted their airplanes, making them turn back. Everyone laughed at these stories. But since they kept happening over and over and over, the commanding general decided to take command of the squadron of bombers that were sent out to destroy some German war materials that was right next to St. Giovanni Rotondo. Actually, it was right in it. My mistake. It was actually in it. And the Allies were going to bomb it. They knew that the German arsenal was there and it existed. But they didn't know exactly where. Later they found out it was in it, but they didn't know where. So not to make any mistake, they had to bomb the entire town. We're not exactly sure where the arsenal is, but we got to bomb the entire town to make sure we get it. Up until then, no one had succeeded in going towards that area because of the flying monk. So they had finally got over. One reported that the bomber actually got over San Giovanni. One reported we actually got over it. And when the bombardier went to open the bomb bay doors to release the bombs, pushing the release, it wouldn't work. The bombs wouldn't fall. So this pilot, when he landed, reported it, and the mechanics looked at it and said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the mechanism to release the bombs. Why didn't you release the bombs? He's like, we couldn't. So they pushed these buttons and the bombs wouldn't drop. And at the base, these mechanics looked at it and they said, it's mechanically inexplicable. Then the American general had enough. And he says, you crazy Italians, I'm sick of this. And so the American general was very upset as the Italian general recounted that as soon as they arrived near their target, they saw a flying monk. Can you imagine? This American general listening to these Italians talking about a flying monk? If that was the other side, they probably would have executed the poor guys. The bombs, at one point, the American then ordered them back up. And they tried to drop their bombs this time. You know what happened to the bombs? They fell way, way away, even though they dropped them over it, way over into nearby woods harmlessly. Never touched San Giovanni Rotondo. They dropped, and the planes turned around by themselves. Couldn't explain it. Now, someone told the commanding general that that monk may be residing right there at San Giovanni, because there was a priest who was getting something called the stigmata. So now all of a sudden you're starting to make a little believer out of all these military guys. And so somebody told this commanding officer about this monk who's getting something called the stigmata, and they consider him a saint. And perhaps he's the one responsible. At this point, they dropped it. They were too afraid to get court-martialed and thrown out of the military. Sad, right? But it never left the mind of the general. So you know what happened? After the war ended and he retired, he got a few of the pilots together and they went to the monastery. You want to see a picture of it? Here it is. There is the general with Padre Pio and the pilots. Incredible. And so he saw when they walked in, here comes all these military guys. They go to the convent, they go to the monastery. Can you imagine the head monk there? You know, it's like, or friar. It's like, are we in trouble? And they're looking for this flying monk. So the general goes in and all his pilots are there. And all of a sudden, all the friars started coming out. And they all immediately recognized Padre Pio. They all recognized him. So Padre Pio put his hand on the shoulder of the general and smiled. And Padre Pio said to the general, "So it is you. You are the one who wished to do away with our monastery." Could you imagine the general? Sorry. Oh man. Astonished at seeing and hearing this friar, the general fell to his knees. The two became friends. The general was a Protestant and converted to Catholicism. Wow. You know, Padre Pio continues to work miracles today. That is one of my favorites, but continues today. He's been called one of the most active saints in the church because he's still at work today. Many miracles and wonders have been attributed to him, including healing, soul reading, as I said, levitation, bilocation. But most of all, what people remember him for was he was joyful.